everyone, it's me Leonie and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be doing my February wrap-up. I know it's a little bit late, but we're just gonna do it anyway. So in the month of February I read 2 books. It's not much, but I guess I'm just gonna have to accept the fact that I'm not going to be reading 10 books a month ever, even though I wish I could. So the first book I read in February was the one book that I read during the Rainbow-thon, and that is End of Days by Susan E., which is the 3rd book in the Penguin and the End of Days series, the first book being Angel Fall. If you do not know what this book is about, I talk about it all the time. It's one of my favorite series. It's a dystopian series about the apocalypse where the angels are attacking the city, and this girl, Penguin, and an angel, Raffi, that has lost his wings have to work together to find Penguin's little sister. I love this series, and I've been wanting to read the last book in the series for such a long time, but I had been putting it off because I didn't want the series to be finished, and I ended up really enjoying the last book. I heard a lot of people talking about how they didn't really like the last book, how they thought that the ending of this book was very rushed, so I went into it with pretty low expectations about the ending. So in the end, I was actually kind of pleasantly surprised by the ending. I actually really liked it, mostly because I just had really low expectations. The great thing about this series is that there are so many things happening where you're just like, did Susan E. just really make that happen? I can promise you that you have never read a series that ends the way that this one does. I was just like, how did she even come up with that? How did she even think of that? I thought it was great. Just like the other 2 books, it was gory and creepy in a way that just makes me really happy. In this book, there is a lot more romance than there is in the first 2 books, but I was actually kind of content with that because I had been waiting for my ship to sail for about 3 years, so when this ship suddenly took off to the end of the world, I was kind of happy about that, actually. I have to say that Angel Fall, the first book, is still definitely the best one in the series and my favorite one, but I enjoyed End of Days more than I liked World After, actually, and I gave it 4.5. I don't tend to give half stars, but I feel like 4 stars is too low for this book, but 5 stars is a little bit too much because Angel Fall was better than End of Days. I'm making an exception for this book and I'm gonna go with the half star, so 4.5 stars to End of Days by Susan E. Rate this series. And the next and last book that I read in February was Glass Sword by Victoria Aveyard, the sequel to the very much loved Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I really enjoyed reading this book. It was a lot of fun, but I definitely did not love it as much as I loved the first book. There are some things that I was kind of disappointed by in this book, and there were also some things that I actually really loved in this book. The first thing that I was kind of disappointed by in Glass Sword was the fact that it wasn't like Red Queen, where it was super like fantasy-esque and very inspired by Roman culture, which I really loved about Red Queen, but instead Glass Sword really takes this dystopian turn, and suddenly everything has this very dystopian, almost science fiction-y feel to it. The most part of Glass Sword we spend in either a vehicle or a prison, which felt very dystopian and not very fantasy-ish to me, and although I do like dystopian, I picked this book up because I wanted to get back to that great fantasy world of Red Queen. We barely get to see any of that in this book, and that kind of disappointed me. The second thing that I was kind of disappointed by in Glass Sword was that it has that pretty typical second book in series thing, where it feels like the entire story is just preparing for the 3rd book in the series. I had kind of the same experience with this book as I had with A Court of Thorns and Roses, where in the last 100 pages, suddenly this like really important plot point is thrown at us, and this really new super interesting story arc just unfolds, and I was just kind of like, that could have been the entire book. Why wasn't the entire book this story arc? Because it was so cool, but instead it was just kind of like stuffed into the last 100 pages, which is pretty sad because it could have been really amazing if it was stretched out over the entire book. However, there were definitely things that I really liked, and there is especially one thing where I thought Glass Sword was just so much better than Red Queen, and that is with characterization. In this book, all the characters just become so much more developed, and I got so much more invested into the characters. Especially Kel and Mare in Glass Sword, they both just descend into this abyss of darkness mentally. We get to see so much of their shadow side and their flaws and their fears and all their struggles, and I loved reading about that. And I really appreciate that Victoria Aveyard decided to put so much morally grayness around our main character and our love interest, which is kind of a tricky choice. I think I can actually safely say that in just a matter of one book, Kel and Mare went from two characters that I didn't really care about to two of my favorite characters of all time. And apart from that, of course, there was just a lot of very entertaining action in this book. Victoria Aveyard just shines when it comes to like epic magical battles. Overall, I definitely enjoyed this book and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I definitely have a lot more feelings about this book and things that I want to say, but they are all spoilers, so I'm definitely going to be doing a discussion video for Glassword. So when I put that up, if you want to see it, you can click here. So yeah, that was my weird-ish February wrap-up. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in another video. Goodbye!